this is something I've tried to wrap my brain around. Okay, it's the idea of having analog and digital effects, and why I'm okay with some things being analog and some things being digital.
Okay.
All right, so an amp, I don't want digital. Forget that.
Right.
I had thought about getting, something I can just plug straight into the PA, having no sound on stage.
Yeah.
And
You almost went to the dark web.
I almost did.
The dark side.
That leads to the dark side.
I see the benefits of it. Truly, if you have a silent stage and you're the only one with an amp, it is kind of weird. Okay?
Yeah.
It is weird. But that's like a digital processor type thing, sending it to the PA. That's different. What I'm talking about is strictly stomp box style effects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? For me, this is how my brain wraps around it. Okay? I think when I first started, I was like, analog everything. Digital is crap.
You kind of started guitar in the boutique era.
Yeah,
Like
when
when
full tone was huge.
When boutique pedals were a big thing, Love Pedal, Full Tone, like
Yeah.
all those companies were really hitting hard. That's kind of when you started guitar.
Right. So when I started, I was like, analog everything. There's no other option.
If it's not true bypass, I'm not buying it.
Probably at that time. I didn't realize I needed a buffer.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's how I started. Now, I am going to admit, I recently purchased an HX1
Mm-hmm.
for a small board because, man, that is a Swiss Army knife if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
When studio guys are using M5s, M9s, M500s
Right.
from Line 6, and it does anything you need to on the fly, I do get it.
Yeah.
So I put it on my small board because, man, it does everything.
Yeah.
It is a digital pedal. It steered me away from analog, but it is a do-it-all. So it's got all my modulation in there. I can have a looper. I can have reverb.
You've got a lot more digital pedals than you realize, too.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But it made me think, like, what's my cutoff with digital and analog?
Yeah.
So I think in my brain, if it's overdrive, fuzz, always analog. Or amp, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's modulation, delay, reverb, well, I would like reverb to be true. Like, reverb.
You gotta carry a plate around with you, or like a
hello.
yeah.
Anyways, really, overdrive and amp tones I want to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I think I'm okay with digital now. And it's weird saying that.
Yeah, but I think you've been okay with digital with all that stuff for a long time.
When?
I think most guitar players have been. I mean, you think about like one of your go-to delays for years was at TC Flashback.
Okay, that's because I didn't have a choice because it did it all, so I had to have it.
Right, but you were
It wasn't my first choice.
It might not have been your first choice, but it was like a go-to for you.
It was.
There's a lot of modulation pedals too that have been digital that you've never been too concerned with, I think. I do think there is something to analog overdrives and fuzzes that digital, for whatever reason, just has a hard time picking up. And I think if you're going for a true analog sounding modulation, there's nothing that touches it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, hearing a Boss chorus and a digital chorus, while it sounds good, it doesn't give you the same feel.
Yeah, think of like Phase 90s or those old Electro Harmonix pedals, that just are so like gooey sounding and just like thick.
Wow.
Nothing.
Great adjectives.
Well, I mean, I don't, you know what I mean? That was probably not the best.
Gooey and thick.
But, I mean, there's just something to those pedals that no matter how much we try in the digital form, it gets close, it gets ballparky, but it's not the same. However, I think for us, the average musician, the average gigging player and whatnot, or bedroom player or whatever, I think most of us can get by on a lot of these digital modulation pedals because we kind of need a grab bag for studio guys too. I say that. I mean, the professional studio guys are doing very similar things where they've got the M9s on their board or HX1s or whatever it is, the new Fractal FM, whatever they put out here recently, where the modulation stuff is coming out digital because they kind of need a grab bag of grabbing multiple modulation pedals. And maybe they don't have room for an electric mistress and a CE1 and like whatever the modulation pedals, because they get big.
Right.
To do it, vintage style like that and all analog is kind of cantankerous, and it's hard to get dialed up, and then you got to deal with all the issues with buffers and with bad bypasses or feeding them into your signal all the time. It makes way more sense to go digital, in my opinion.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear you say that, I'll be honest.
Well, for modulation
For a
especially.
long time, you were like, forget digital everything.
You're right. I had a bunch of, analog modulation effects. But I am more okay with it now. Especially for that type of thing.
When it's, especially like a Swiss Army knife, kind of like, especially for playing like top 40 hits. I mean, you kind of have to have that grab and go type stuff.
If I was playing my own material, and I was playing my own written stuff, I would probably have 2, maybe 3 modulation effects that I used regularly that were my go-tos. And I would not have them digital. I would have them analog.
To inspire you.
To be inspired, and it's like the most important modulation effects to my sound and to what I write. I would buy the real deal. But the fact that I'm not doing that, I'm playing mainly all covers, and I'm playing like, whatever. I need to have a grab bag of stuff I can grab and reach for. So for that reason, I'm good with digital. As much as I love analog delay, there's something to some of those digital delays that are just different. So I'm okay with that. And same with reverb. I mean, I don't know how you're going to get by other than a spring tank.
Right.
You're not gonna,
that big, was it Surfy Bear or whatever?
Yeah, it's got all the springs in it and stuff. So other than things like that, you're not going to get away with an analog.
So you brushed over it. Why is overdrive different for you? You said it doesn't have the same thing, but what does it do differently?
I don't know. It just sucks.
Okay.
So I don't know. There's just something about it. I have played the Strymon overdrive pedal, whatever that is. Whatever. I can't think the name of that one, the overdrive.
Riverside?
The Riverside. That's the name of it. It's got multiple little...
It's the yellow one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it yellow or red?
The red one's like a boost. It's got boosters and...
Okay, it's the yellow one then.
Okay.
Yeah. And it just did not sound good. I just was not a fan of it. And I generally, like the sound of a lot of those Strymon pedals.
Strymon's great.
But I was not a fan of those overdrives. Anytime I've tried some digital version of it, and even in like multi-effects pedals, there's something missing. Like it's so important to me to have a great overdrive sound. Maybe that's it. As I'm talking through it and I'm figuring it out, maybe. It is so like core to my sound to have a great overdrive sound. Just like we were talking about how important it would be if I was writing my own music to have 1 or 2 modulation or 3 modulation effects that are very core to my sound, that are super important, that's my overdrive. Because even for like, cover band gigs where I'm playing top 40 hits or I'm playing whatever, I can use my favorite overdrives in that, and it works. I don't have to play the same overdrives they're playing. I can have 2 or 3 overdrives on my board. And it is very important to me to have an overdrive pedal that I bond with. I like how it breaks up. I like how it reacts when I roll my volume down and does all that stuff. I don't need a grab bag digital overdrive pedal.
So I felt the same exact way you did till I got this HX1, man.
Oh no.
Hey, I'm telling you right now.
His new pedal board's just the HX1.
I've got 5 of them. The reason why I say that, man, some of those drives are fantastic.
I'm not saying they're not
thing.
I'm not saying they're not fantastic. What I'm saying is it's very important for me to have the right drive sounds and the right amp that I like. And I've got some pedals that I absolutely love into my current amps.
I think for me personally, it's, if I had the HX1 being on my drives, I'd be tweaking all day. And I've already tweaked a lot. Sorry, that sounds terrible.
You've been a tweaker, man.
I've already messed with the settings so much for my modulation. Like, I really don't want to dive any deeper. Like, I just, I've got reverb, I've got, modulation, I've got EQ in that thing, I've got a compress. Like, my mind's overfilled with ideas.
Yeah.
And I could probably have 500 settings on that thing. I just need to make it bare bones for me personally. So it... analog drive that I can tweak on the fly too.
Yeah.
versus, having everything in that HX1. To me, it makes more sense.
Yeah, and then you've got HX Stomps, and people will love to tell me like how great the drives are in HX Stomps and all these different things. And I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is for my setup and what I do, that's not like ideal for me. I don't want to be breaking down blocks and menu diving and doing all this stuff. And some of the processors that are out there, you don't have to menu dive much. But kind of like all the boards we were talking about not too long ago, about how these boards have grown and grown and grown, and like the all-in digital effect pedal that does everything, kind of people have stepped away from that a little bit to where they're using it for amp stuff and like reverbs and different things, and then they're putting drive pedals in front of it or like some different pedals in front of it. I think people have realized, and not that they didn't realize it before, but I do think that people all agree that your drive pedals are very like important for your sound. It's probably one of the most important things. So I don't want to go the digital route with that, because the reason why I go digital usually is because I need a grab box of a bunch of different effects in one box, or I'm not capable of doing it in an analog fashion. I can't take a haul with me. I can't take plates with me. I can't take...
If I had a chance to take 3 Memory Men to a gig, I would do it.
You'd do it. I would take an Echoplex, I would take 2 Memory Man, and I would take a couple SDE 3000s. Like, it just doesn't work.
But I'd rather have the Halo. So it doesn't take up so much space.
Absolutely. The Halo's going to take its spot.
Yeah.
We need to move on to our next topic.
Okay.
We could talk about this all day.